Inside Donetsk, as residents flee attacks on Ukrainian region Putin wants to control. The Donetsk region of eastern Ukraine has long been in Moscow's sights. Vladimir Putin reportedly says he'll freeze the war in return for full control of it. Russia already controls 70% of Donetsk and nearly all of neighboring Luhansk, and is making slow but steady advances. I'm heading to the frontline Donetsk town of Dobropilya with 2 humanitarian volunteers, just 8 kilometers, 5 miles, from Russia's positions. They're on a mission to bring the sick, elderly and children to safer ground. At first, it goes like clockwork. We speed into the town in an armored car, equipped with rooftop drone jamming equipment, hitting 130 kilometers per hour, 80 miles per hour. The road is covered in tall green netting which obscures visibility from above, protecting it from Russian drones. This is their second trip of the morning, and the streets are mostly empty. The few remaining residents only leave their homes to quickly collect supplies. Russian attacks come daily. The town already looks abandoned and has been without water for a week. Every building we pass has been damaged, with some reduced to ruins. In the previous 5 days, Lars, a 31-year-old German, and Varia, a 19-year-old Ukrainian, who work for the charity Universal Aid Ukraine, have made dozens of trips to evacuate people. A week earlier, small groups of Russian troops breached the defenses around the town, sparking fears that the front line of Ukraine's so-called fortress belt, some of the most heavily defended parts of the Ukrainian front, could collapse. Extra troops were rushed to the area and Ukrainian authorities say the situation has been stabilized. But most of Dobropilya's residents feel it's time to go. As the evacuation team arrives, Vitaly Kalinichenko, 56, is waiting on the doorstep of his apartment block, with a plastic bag full of belongings in hand. My windows were all smashed. Look, they all flew out on the second floor. I'm the only one left, he says. He's wearing a gray t-shirt and black shorts, and his right leg is bandaged. Mr. Kalinichenko points to a crater beyond some rose bushes where a Shahed drone crashed a couple of nights earlier, shattering his windows and cutting his leg. The engine from another drone lies in a neighbor's garden. As we are about to leave, Lars spots a drone overhead and we take cover again under trees. His handheld drone detector shows multiple Russian drones in the area. An older woman in a summer dress and straw hat is walking by with a shopping trolley. He warns her about the drone, and she quickens her pace. An explosion hits nearby, its sound echoing off the nearby apartment blocks. But before we can attempt to leave, there is still another family to be rescued, just around the corner. Lars goes on foot to find them, switching off the idling vehicle's drone jamming equipment to save battery power. If you hear a drone, it's the 2 switches in the middle console. Turn it on, he says as he disappears around the corner. The jammer is only effective against some Russian drones. A series of blasts hit the neighborhood. A woman, out to fetch water with her dog, runs for cover. Lars returns with more evacuees, and with drones still in the air above, drives out of town even faster than he arrived. Inside the evacuation convoy, I sit beside Anton, 31. His mother stayed behind. She cried as he departed and he hopes she will leave too soon. In war, front lines shift, towns are lost and won and lost again, but with Russia advancing and the fate of the region hanging on negotiations, this may be the final time Anton and the other evacuees see their homes. Anton says he's never left the town before. Over the roar of the engine, I ask him if Ukraine should relinquish Donbass, the resource-rich greater region made up of Donetsk and Luhansk. We need to sit at the negotiation table and after all resolve this conflict in a peaceful way. Without blood, without victims, he says. But Varia, 19, feels differently. We can never trust Putin or Russia, whatever they are saying, and we have experience of that. If we give them Donbass, it won't stop anything but only give Russia more room for another attack, she tells me. The situation in Donbass is increasingly perilous for Ukraine as Russia slowly but steadily advances. President Volodymyr Zelensky has scoffed at suggestions that it could be lost by the end of this year, predicting it would take 4 more years for Russia to fully occupy what remains. But it's unlikely Ukraine will recapture significant territory here without new weaponry or additional support from the West. This part of Donetsk is critical to Ukraine's defensive. If lost or given to Russia, neighboring Kharkiv and Zaporizhia regions, and beyond, would be at greater risk. The cost of holding on is measured in Ukrainian soldiers' lives and body parts. Later on, I drive to a nearby field hospital under the cover of darkness. The drone activity never ceases, and the war injured, and the dead, can only be safely retrieved at night. Russian casualties are far higher, perhaps 3 times as much or more, but it has a greater capacity to absorb losses than Ukraine. The wounded begin to arrive, the cases growing steadily more serious as night stretches into morning. The casualties are from fighting in Pokrovsk, a city that Russia has been trying to seize for a year, and is now partially encircled. It's a key city in Donetsk's defense, and the fighting has been brutal. The first man arrives conscious, a bullet wound to chest from a firefight. Next comes another man in his 40s covered in shrapnel wounds. It took 2 days and 3 attempts to rescue him, such was the intensity of the fighting. Next, a man whose right leg has been almost blown off entirely by a drone strike on the road from Pokrovsk to Mirnorad. SNR Lieutenant Dima, a 42-year-old surgeon, moves from patient to patient. This is a medical stabilization unit, so his job is to patch up the injured as quickly as possible and send them on to a main hospital for further treatment. It's hard because I know I can do more, but I don't have the time, he tells me. After all this carnage, I ask him too if Donbass should be surrendered to bring peace. We have to stop the war, but we don't want to stop it like this, he says. We want back our territory, our people, and we have to punish Russia for what they did. He's exhausted, casualties have been heavier, dozens a day, since Russia's incursion, and the injuries are the worst the doctors have seen since the war began, mostly because of drones. We just want to go home to live in peace without this nightmare, this blood, this death, he says. On the drive out that afternoon, between fields of corn and sunflowers, miles of newly uncoiled barbed wire glint in the sunlight. They run alongside raised banks of red earth, deep trenches, and neat lines of anti-tank Dragon's Teeth concrete pyramids. All designed to slow any sudden Russian advance. It is believed that Russia has over 100,000 troops standing by, waiting to exploit another opportunity like the earlier breaches around Dobropilya. These new fortifications carved in the Ukrainian dirt chart a deteriorating situation here in Donetsk. What's left of the region may yet be surrendered by diplomacy, but until then Ukraine, bloodied and exhausted, remains intent on fighting for every inch of it. Trump threatens to deploy troops to Baltimore to clean up crime. President Donald Trump has threatened to deploy troops to Baltimore, escalating a clash with Maryland Governor Wes Moore after the Democrat invited him to join a safety walk in the city. If Wes Moore needs help, like Gavin Newsom did in LA, I will send in the troops, which is being done in nearby DC, and quickly clean up the crime, Trump wrote on social media. The remarks mark the latest flashpoint in the president's efforts to deploy National Guard troops to Democratic-led cities as part of what he calls a crackdown on crime. The use of military personnel for domestic law enforcement has drawn fierce backlash from Democrats. One governor described it as an abuse of power. As many as 1,700 National Guardsmen are expected to mobilize in 19 states in the coming weeks, U.S. media report. Governor Moore, a frequent critic of the president's strategy, said Trump's comments about fighting crime come off as so tone-deaf and so ignorant. It's because they have not walked our streets, Moore said. They have not been in our communities, and they are more than happy to keep making these repeated tropes about us. Trump's Sunday Truth Social comments appeared to be a direct response to Moore's invitation letter to Trump, which the president described as nasty and provocative. As president, I would much prefer that he clean up this crime disaster before I go there for a walk, Trump wrote. Is crime in Washington, D.C., out of control, as Trump claims? Crime in D.C. What do the figures say and how safe do people feel? Trump has already deployed about 2,000 troops to Washington, D.C., a Democratic stronghold. The White House says hundreds of arrests have been made since the operation began. Speaking in the White House Oval Office on Friday, Trump said the mission had brought total safety to Washington. D.C. was a hellhole, he said, but now it's safe. On Friday, the Pentagon confirmed that those troops who were previously in the U.S. Capitol unarmed would begin to carry weapons. Those troops, who have been sent to Washington, D.C. by a handful of Republican-led states, have so far not taken part in law enforcement operations. Instead, they have been posted near local landmarks. According to crime figures published by Washington, D.C.'s Metropolitan Police, MPDC, violent offenses fell after peaking in 2023 and in 2024 hit their lowest level in 30 years. They are continuing to fall, according to preliminary data for 2025. Violent crime overall is down 26% this year compared to the same point in 2024, and robbery is down 28%, according to the MPDC. Trump has suggested he would deploy troops in New York and Chicago as well. This escalation has led to condemnation from Democrats' leaders of other states and cities, including Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, who said Trump's threats to deploy troops to Chicago is an abuse of power. Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has also weighed in, asserting that Trump lacks the legal authority to dispatch troops to cities like Baltimore and Chicago. He said the president was exploiting reduced crime levels, like Baltimore's fewest homicides in over 50 years, to manufacture a crisis. A poll conducted by the Washington Post and Schar School released earlier this week found the deployment deeply unpopular among the city's residents, with almost 80% saying they were opposed to both the deployment of federal officers and the National Guard, as well as the takeover of the Metropolitan Police Department. Clarkson for PM, attacks on police dogs. Do Parliament petitions make a difference? As long as humans have been writing down important information, others have been pulling their leg. So it's no surprise that serious petitions to governments have always been interspersed with tongue-in-cheek campaigns designed to raise a laugh. Some of the greatest civil rights advances started with petitions to government, including the abolition of slavery. It's hard to say the same for the petition to rename raccoons trash pandas. As Parliament marks the 10th anniversary of its e-petition system, the enthusiasm for starting and signing petitions shows no sign of abating, with 57% of people saying they had signed some kind of petition more generally in the past year, according to Office for National Statistics survey data in 2022. There's something about the simple act of signing your name to add your support to a cause close to your heart that has allowed the art of petitioning to continue to flourish, even in the digital age. If anything, the launch of Downing Street's own e-petition site in 2006 opened the famous black door of number 10 wider than ever to the public, which inevitably led to a flurry of spoof campaigns. A petition calling for broadcaster Jeremy Clarkson to be made Prime Minister was quickly backed by more than 50,000 people, although a jokey YouTube response from Downing Street led to Gordon Brown's government dourly being accused of wasting taxpayers' money. Pentagon fires intelligence agency chief after Iran attack assessment. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has fired the Pentagon's intelligence agency chief, just weeks after a White House rebuke of a review assessing the impact of American strikes on Iran. Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz will no longer serve as head of U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, the Pentagon said in a statement. 2 other senior military commanders have also been ousted by the Pentagon. The Defense Department has not offered any immediate explanation on the firings. In June, President Donald Trump had pushed back strongly on a leaked DIA report that found that attacks on Iran had set back its nuclear program by months only. The White House declared the agency's assessment flat out wrong. Trump had declared the nuclear sites in Iran completely destroyed, and had accused the media of an attempt to demean one of the most successful military strikes in history. Speaking at the NATO summit at the time, Hegseth had said that the report was made on low intelligence, and that the FBI was probing the leak. Cruz's exit was first reported by the Washington Post. The DIA is part of the Pentagon and specializes in military intelligence to support operations. It collects large amounts of technical intelligence, but is distinct from other agencies like the CIA. It is understood that Hegseth had also ordered the removal of the Chief of U.S. Naval Reserves and the Commander of Naval Special Warfare Command, an anonymous source told Reuters on Friday. In a statement, U.S. Senator Mark Warner warned that Cruz's sacking was a sign that Trump had a dangerous habit of treating intelligence as a loyalty test rather than a safeguard for our country. Trump has removed a number of officials whose analysis have been seen to be at odds with the president. In July, Trump said that he had ordered his team to dismiss Commissioner of Labor Statistics Erica McIntyre immediately after a report showed that job growth had slowed. And in April, Trump fired General Timothy Haw as director of the National Security Agency, along with more than a dozen staff at the White House National Security Council. Hegseth has also pushed out a number of military officials at the Pentagon. In February, he fired Air Force General C.Q. Brown, who was dismissed along with 5 other admirals and generals. Actor Jerry Adler, best known for playing consigliere Herman Hesh Rabkin in The Sopranos, has died aged 96. Although he found fame on the small screen, Adler did not start acting until his early 60s, as he was preparing to retire from an illustrious behind-the-scenes Broadway career. The theater veteran worked alongside stars including Julie Andrews, Angela Lansbury and Richard Burton during more than 3 decades in the industry. The Brooklyn-born actor passed peacefully in his sleep on Saturday, representatives said on behalf of his family, according to the Associated Press and Fox News. Adler worked as a stage manager, supervisor and director on more than 50 Broadway productions, after being offered his first job by his father, who worked in the industry, while at university. He stage managed the original 1956 production of My Fair Lady, starring the then 20-year-old Julie Andrews, and 1969's Coco, in which Katharine Hepburn played the founder of fashion house Chanel. He went on to supervise the original production of the beloved musical Annie in 1977, and the 1980 play Camelot, starring Richard Burton. He first stepped into the world of TV in the 1980s and early 90s, stage managing a handful of productions including several Tony Awards. But it wasn't until he was preparing to retire that Adler began acting, after a phone call from a friend casting the 1992 film The Public Eye. He then went on to further film roles, including 1993's Manhattan Murder Mystery and 1996's Getting Away with Murder. But he found fame for his role in HBO's acclaimed series The Sopranos, as an advisor to James Gandolfini's mob boss Tony and an old friend of his father. He later took on recurring roles in CBS's The Good Wife and spin-off The Good Fight, as boorish law partner Howard Lyman, and FX's Rescue Me, as New York Fire Station Chief Sidney Feinberg. Other notable roles included Rabbi Alan Schulman on CBS, Northern Exposure and the handyman Mr. Wicker on NBC's Mad About You. He also made one-off appearances in iconic U.S. shows such as Curb Your Enthusiasm and The West Wing. Adler returned to Broadway as an actor, first in the 2000 play Taller Than a Dwarf, and then in 2015's Fish in the Dark, bringing his career full circle.